host, Diana Everett Snyder. As I did last week, and I think I'm going to continue this week, I'm going to give out my contact information at the beginning of the show because I tend to run out at the end and fall off the edge of the platform. So if you'd like to contact me with thoughts on today's show or ideas for a future show, please do so at Canary Chronicles at outlook.com or Diana Everett Snyder, all one word, Diana Everett Snyder at hotmail.com. I'd also like to thank Tressa for some lovely healing supplies which she had sent while I was sick, courtesy of our mutual friend, Karen Tostado. And I'd also very much like to thank Michelle, Abby, Terrence, Connor, and Scott for their heartfelt thoughts on the Kelly Thomas murder, which I discussed last week, and I will continue this week. We'll have a guest the second half of the show, and we're going to be talking about jury nullification. And also to my friend Bill for his feelings on the matter regarding the Kelly Thomas murder. And as I said, that'll be the second half of the show. Someone sent me an email, and there's a small piece that I wanted to read because it's just a great piece of wording, and it's this. It says, "We are killing to bring peace. We are legislating to bring freedom. We're standardizing education to gut it to the core of the common standard. We're standardizing medicine to kill everyone equally. So when everyone is equally in the gutter, up shit creek without a paddle, sitting in a leaky boat with chemtrails and Fukushima fallout raining down on us, who is going to save us? Whom? Because it won't be the president or the Federal Reserve, your bank or your grocer." And I just thought that was great. And someone else wrote, I had said something last week, and he quoted me, and then he went on to say, "You know, Dinah, if the measure of a nation can be seen in the way it treats its most vulnerable, then you are right. America has passed the tipping point and is headed straight down the mountain. Our vulnerable are dying. America is plummeting on the International Index of Education and Health Standards. We spend more per capita on healthcare, yet we are a nation of over-medicated, chronically obese, less than exceptional, entitled children with a messiah complex, and Barack Hussein Obama is not that man." And there you have it. That's the thoughts of the people that are listening to my particular radio show. I'm pretty certain that many people share their views. I want to read you something by William Arthur Ward. It says, "Our words reflect our thoughts. Our manners mirror our self-esteem. Our actions reflect our character. And our habits predict the future." George Orwell said, "It does not matter if the war is real, or when it is, that victory is not possible. The war is not meant to be won. It is meant to be continuous." Last week I gave you a list called, which was the 7 deadly sins. And just as a refresher, the 7 deadly sins are pride, envy, anger, sloth, greed, gluttony, and lust. This week I want to add to that narcissism and hedonism. Narcissism, according to the Oxford Dictionary, is described thus: excessive or erotic interest in oneself and one's physical appearance, and the psychology of narcissism is described as extreme selfishness with grandiose views of one's own talents and a craving for admiration. The psychoanalysis of narcissism is self-centeredness arising from failure, and to distinguish the self from the external as a feature of a mental disorder. Hedonism is described as the pursuit or devotion to pleasure, especially to the pleasure of the senses. The philosophy of hedonism is the ethical doctrine holding that only what is pleasant or has pleasant consequences is intrinsically good. And the psychology thereof is the doctrine holding that behavior is motivated by the desire for pleasure and the avoidance of pain. I would go so far as to say that Americans in general suffer from narcissism and hedonism, and the Obama family in particular. Last week I spoke extensively about the ways in which Michelle Obama and Barack Obama and the government have let down the American people. Things such as the NDAA, the lack of transparency, the GMO issue. Barack Hussein Obama stumped. He went around the country looking for votes, saying that the American people had every right to have their food labeled. As soon as he was in power, of course, he put Monsanto in charge of the FDA and the EPA, and now they pretty much own Congress. The Supreme Court recently had a ruling, which I'll get to later in the show, that shows exactly what our government feels about our feelings to do with GMOs. He misrepresented and lied about healthcare. I've talked about that excessively, as has pretty much every other radio show. The issue of his eligibility is compelling. We have 27 states and Ohio refusing Obamacare, something I'll talk about later in the show. And then we have the Trans-Pacific Alliance, which hands over every man, woman, and child in America to the corporate predators and shreds what's left of the Constitution. Something I might have time for in the show, I don't know. And then we have Michelle Obama. What can I say about this woman? Not what I'd really like to, because it's a radio show after all. She, when they were campaigning, she said that one of the things that she was going to do was be a voice for military families. And in the spirit of that, she started all these initiatives and campaigns called Joining Forces, the Veterans Initiative, the Veterans Program. She also wanted to have our children and people in general eating better, so she started a wellness initiative, a health initiative, a garden initiative, and randomly a breastfeeding initiative. And in all of these, she has absolutely failed. And as I said last week, what she needs to understand is that putting a measure or an initiative in place is not a photo op opportunity. At that point, she needs to get out in the street and start talking to people, finding out what the real issues are, and then advocating for changes. She put out a book called Victory Gardens. Every garden is a munitions plant, which is actually part of a slogan during the Second World War. And it says, her book says, American Grown, How the White House Kitchen Garden Inspires Families, Schools, and Communities. It's a joke because around the United States, many families have been in the crosshairs of the city ordinances and been forced to pull up their vegetable gardens and face incredible fines and penalties, lost time sitting around in courthouses. People have been forced to get rid of their chickens and their ducks. In the meantime, the First Lady is, putting out this book with her smiling face, and every second picture of her is her sticking food in her mouth. Along those lines, she started Jumpstart, which is to get our children moving. It was kind of ironic because around the same time, there was the huge controversy around pink slime and the subgrade food that is being bought by school districts around the country and served to our children in the school cafeterias. Jumpstart and the whole food thing with Michelle Obama, to me, really is a joke, simply because she's married to the man who put Monsanto in charge of America's food and food safety. And she's obfuscating the issue, and she's completely misguided in this whole concept of healthy food, because until President Obama allows genetically modified foods to be labeled, and until they crack down on the things that are happening in our food industry and our farm belt, no one can eat healthily, and it doesn't matter how much you jump. It's like walking for the cure. We already have the cure for cancer, and it's not walking, I assure you. So the whole thing is just really ridiculous, and she's failed in every measure, and she should just sit down and be quiet now. The other thing that I spoke about last week was, I actually read this whole thing, and I'm not going to again this week, but Obama had said that one of the things that, two of the things that he has is a pen and a phone, and he wasn't scared to use it, which, for the president of America, who likes to think of themselves as the global power, for the president to stand up and reiterate the point that he has a pen and a phone is infantile and ridiculous and smacks of narcissism and hedonism, and idiocy, if you ask me. So, moving right along, I want to remind you that the Trans-Pacific Alliance has been fast-tracked, and you've got to know that there's something wrong with it when even our Congress is complaining that they haven't had a chance to see any of the paperwork to do with it. And so let me just move around some things on my desk. There's a site that you can go to. It's www.stoptpp.org, and I urge everyone to go there and look at what they have up there. It's going to affect 800 million people plus. It's a free trade zone from Vietnam to Chile. It's 40% of all of our global economy, and it's a third of all trade. And it's not a trade document. It's a corporate mandate. It's a corporate takeover with the full might of our vested private for-profit corporations. There's enhanced freedoms to enter other countries and take natural resources. There's a very worrisome issue relating to internet freedoms through a backdoor of the Copyright Act, which was designed to stop pirating. It was an anti-piracy law, and it's being used and changed in order to bring about some very frightening changes to our internet freedoms. All the signaling countries, all the countries that sign up for this will be required to change their domestic laws to meet these enhanced mandates of the TPP. So I urge you to go there. I've been talking to people, and too many people don't know anything about this Trans-Pacific Alliance, which is being fast-tracked, by the way. So it's very important to get on it. Hagel has been very instrumental. He had a huge Asia-Pacific tour last year, and something you need to know is China has been excluded from the TPP. And Hagel has been going around and meeting with far too many people that haven't been reported by our news media here in this country. The other issue with Obama that I wanted to just recap is the UN Small Arms Treaty. I talked about that excessively last week. If you haven't, please go and look that up and read it. The language is not what it has been reported in the media at all. Now I want to talk about something else that, of course, Michelle Obama and Barack Hussein Obama are complicit in, and things that they stumped for when they were looking for your vote, and ways in which they have completely and utterly failed. And that is to do with our U.S. veterans. 22 military veterans die a day in the United States. I say this quite often on my show. It's a horrendous statistic, and what's important to know about this number is that more veterans are dying on the streets of America than have died in our wars, in our current wars. That is a frightening statistic. The number of active members of the U.S. military that are killing themselves now exceeds the number that are dying on the battlefield. Since the beginning of the Iraq War, twice as many members of the Texas National Guard have killed themselves as have been killed in combat. And according to one recent study, 22 veterans a day kill themselves in the United States. So this is a completely different number to the other 22. At this point, combat veterans account for about 20% of all suicides in the United States. The unemployment rate for our military veterans is significantly higher than for the population as a whole. This is especially true for our younger veterans. On any given night, approximately 200,000 military veterans are homeless in the United States. All over America, monuments that honor military veterans are crumbling and falling apart. Under the Obama administration, many military veterans have had to pay to have their medals shipped to them. For example, one soldier had to pay $21 shipping fee to get his Purple Heart. And his name is Retired Sergeant Major Rob Dickerson. He said that that's the price that he was forced to pay for his Purple Heart, which is the medal issued to soldiers wounded in action, arrived at his door, COD. I mean, it's the most despicable thing ever. In some areas of the country, the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs has been caught banning the words God and Jesus during funeral services for veterans. One study has discovered that approximately 1/3 of all military veterans returning from Afghanistan and Iraq were officially determined to be mentally ill by government officials, without any further definition of what mentally ill is. And in that, the vast majority of them suffer from PTSD. Under that category of PTSD all over America, this word, mental illness, is being used as a reason to take guns away from our military veterans. Thanks to Operation Vigilant Eagle, a program launched by the Department of Homeland Security in 2009 under Obama, military veterans returning from Iraq and Afghanistan are also being characterized as extremists and potential domestic terrorist threats because they may be disgruntled, disillusioned, or suffering from the psychological effects of war. As a result, these servicemen and women, many of whom are decorated, are finding themselves under surveillance, threatened with incarceration or involuntary commitment, or arrested, all for daring to voice their concerns about the alarming state of our union and the erosion of our freedoms. Very frightening stuff, you know. You need to look below the surface of what this really means for our veterans and ultimately for ourselves, the citizens of this United States. Something else, our Navy, of course, has a lawsuit pending against TEPCO for nuclear fallout that they were exposed to while delivering humanitarian help near the stricken Fukushima event that happened some years ago. And, you know, you have to ask yourself, we have military insurance for our military personnel, regardless of what department they're in. Why is it that these people have to follow a lawsuit of their own? Why is it that their military health insurance is not covering this? And why is it that since our president can get involved with the Trayvon Martin case and voice his opinion, he has yet to say anything about these irradiated sailors, the pending lawsuit, or their health coverage? I find it to be disheartening, despicable, and exactly in line with the way the U.S. has followed its policy towards its veterans since the very beginning, really. It's words. I am at loss for words. Doesn't happen often. So I've talked, of course, about the Unaffordable Health Care Act many, many times. And here is something that is allowing states to exempt themselves from Obamacare. You won't see this reported in the mainstream media. This is through Cornell University Law. And you should go to, in fact, I'm going to put this link in the show when it goes to YouTube. But there is a passage that says, no individual, company, business, non-profit entity, or health insurance issuer offering group or individual health insurance coverage shall be required to participate in any federal health insurance program created under this act or any amendments made by this act, or in any federal health insurance program expanded by this act, or any such amendments, and there shall be no penalty or fine imposed upon any such issuer for choosing not to participate in such programs. Despite what the media and the president has told the American public, you are not obligated to sign up for Obamacare, and I urge you to not sign up for the Unaffordable Health Care Act. Then let's talk about, I think we have commercials coming soon, but I'm going to just keep going until those happen. Something else that I wish that the Obama administration would speak out on is the zero tolerance policies in schools. These policies and the school administrators who relentlessly enforce them are rendering our young people woefully ignorant of the rights that they intrinsically possess as American citizens. What's more, having failed to learn much in the way of civic education while in school, young people are being browbeaten into believing that they have no true rights and government authorities have total power and can violate constitutional rights whenever they see fit. There's an old axiom that what children learn in school today will be the philosophy of government tomorrow. As surveillance cameras, metal detectors, police patrols, zero-tolerance policies, lockdowns, drug-sniffing dogs, and strip searches become the norm in elementary, middle, and high schools across the nation, America's on a fast track to raising up an Orwellian nation.
one populated by compliant citizens accustomed to living in a police state and who march in lockstep to the dictates of this government. In other words, the schools are teaching our young people how to be obedient subjects in a totalitarian society. All you have to do is listen to the mainstream news. A 6-year-old is given a sexual harassment fine for kissing a first grader on the hand. Are we a nation gone absolutely insane? Here are those pesky ads. I'll be right back after.
Six-year-old Colorado boy who got suspended for kissing a girl in school on the hand. So did a zero-tolerance policy go too far? ABC's Clayton Sandell has the story.
6-year-old Hunter Yelton is a thief, the kind that steals kisses.
We're doing reading group, and I made no one kissed on the hand.
But that kiss on the hand didn't just get him a slap on the wrist. It got him suspended for a day and a serious charge on his record.
I did something wrong. I feel sorry.
Hunter's mom met with the principal at his Canyon City, Colorado school and says she was told her first grader's behavior amounted to sexual harassment.
This is taking it to an extreme that doesn't need to be met with a 6-year-old. Now my son's asking questions. What is sex, Mommy? It should not ever be said sex in the sentence with a 6-year-old.
Hunter admits he's been in trouble before, suspended for roughhousing.
We have been working with him with the classroom disruption. He's been grounded for a while.
But sexual harassment?
How can you do this? How can you say this about my child? Remove sexual harassment. Remove it from his record.
Overnight, the school superintendent said, "Our schools do not suspend a student for just a kiss on the hand. We have intervened on behalf of a little girl who wants the unwelcome behavior to stop." Hunter is now back to school. For Good Morning America, Clayton Sandell, ABC News, Denver.
This is Bill Jasper with the New American Magazine. President Obama and the ruling class in Washington believe that you should have no privacy, no secrets. The NSA, the FBI, the IRS, and dozens of other agencies should have full authority at any time, without warrants, probable cause, or due process, to record your telephone conversations, emails, text messages, web page visits, financial transactions, travel, virtually everything concerning you. Elected officials and appointed bureaucrats insist that we citizens must give up more and more of our privacy. At the same time, they believe the federal government should be able to operate in complete secrecy, unaccountable to we the people. You think this sounds too far-fetched? But is it? Case in point, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP. It's a secret, so-called trade agreement that is on track to be completed by the end of 2013. You can expect President Obama to call on Congress to approve the TPP in early 2014. If you are not familiar with the TPP, you are not alone. Many may not recall, but President Obama mentioned it as a top goal in his 2013 State of the Union address.
Now, even as we protect our people, we should remember that today's world presents not just dangers, not just threats, it presents opportunities. To boost American exports, support American jobs, and level the playing field in the growing markets of Asia, we intend to complete negotiations on a Trans-Pacific Partnership. And tonight I'm announcing that we will launch talks on a comprehensive transatlantic trade and investment partnership with the European Union, because trade that is fair and free across the Atlantic supports millions of good-paying American jobs.
Besides the State of the Union address, the only other mention of the agreements has been the minimal coverage by the mainstream media. Usually, they promote it as agreements that will increase trade and thereby generate vast numbers of new jobs for Americans. What is not being promoted is that the TPP and TTIP negotiations have been going on in secret for quite some time. The Obama administration has repeatedly rejected requests by members of the House of Representatives and the Senate for texts of the agreements. Incredibly, while the Obama administration denies access and information to the officials whom the American people have elected to represent them, it gives special access to big corporations, labor unions, and stakeholders whom the administration has selected to represent the American people in so-called advisory committees. So why all the secrecy? What aren't they telling us? Contact your representatives now to stop the TPP and find out more at thenewamerican.com, where we have been exposing the dangers of the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
For more news, visit youtube.com/pigmind5.
This is Ozzy Skateboard, and you're listening to UCY.TV.
All right, let's move on with the second half of the show. We're going to talk about jury nullification. I want to read you something. In 2011, prosecutors charged Julian Hankelman, a retired chemistry professor, with jury tampering because he stood outside the federal courthouse in Manhattan providing information about jury nullification to passers-by. The prosecutors who charged Hankelman said that advocacy of jury nullification, directed as it is to jurors, would be both criminal and without constitutional protections, no matter where it occurred. The prosecutors in this case are wrong. The First Amendment exists to protect speech like this, honest information that the government prefers that citizens not know. Laws against jury tampering are intended to deter people from threatening or intimidating jurors. To contort these laws to justify punishing people like Mr. Hankelman, whose court-appointed counsel described him as a shabby old man distributing his city leaflets from the sidewalk outside a courthouse, is not only unconstitutional but unpatriotic. Jury nullification is not new. Its proponents have included John Hancock and John Adams. So, having said that, I don't know, do we have Robert Johnson on the phone? He's to be my guest? I don't think so. I think we're having some struggle with getting him. So I am just going to continue talking about this. I'll continue reading this piece. The doctrine is premised on the idea that ordinary citizens, not government officials, should have the final say as to whether a person should be punished. As Adams put it, it is to each juror's duty to vote based on his or her own best understanding, judgment, and conscience, though in direct opposition to the direction of the court. In 1895, the Supreme Court ruled that jurors had no rights during trials to be told about nullification. The court did not say that jurors didn't have the power or that they couldn't be told about it, but only that jurors were not required to instruct them on it during a trial. Since then, it's been up to scholars and activists like Mr. Hankelman to get the word out. Nullification has been credited with helping to end alcohol prohibition and laws that criminalize gay sex. Last year, Montana prosecutors were forced to offer a defendant in a marijuana case a favorable plea bargain after so many potential jurors said that they would nullify that the judge didn't think he could find enough jurors to hear the case. Prosecutors, of course, now say that they will remember the actions of these jurors when they consider whether to charge other people with marijuana crimes. So the reason why I wanted to talk about jury nullification this week is simply because last week we spoke about the Kelly Thompson murder. And so I hope that everyone knows about this case. Kelly Thompson was a young homeless man who suffered from schizophrenia. He was known to the police officers who subsequently beat him to brain death on the sidewalk for, as it turns out, absolutely nothing. It went to trial, and the jury found these two police officers not guilty. It's a very compelling case, and it's something that has really changed people's perception of the police in general. Over the last years, of course, there's been a lot of information and a lot of news, even reported by the mainstream media, about the viciousness of our police departments across the United States. This is, of course, goes right into a book that I promote on the show called The Rise of the Warrior Cop by Rodley Balco. And it talks extensively in that book about the militarization of our police force and the training programs that are coordinated between police departments around this country and our military forces, where they have urban drills. They're training for domestic terror threats on the streets of suburbia. Now, when you train people to think like that, they are going to act that way. And the violence has been escalating frighteningly, absolutely frighteningly, and in my opinion and the opinion of many others, completely out of control. The sad thing about the Kelly Thomas acquittal is that it really now has given permission to these violent cops, these predatory cops in all these police departments. It has sent them a message that says, carry on. We have your back. That's essentially what this is. There's one cop in particular that I want to single out from the Kelly Thomas murder, and that is Officer Jay Cincinnati. He was on a $40,000 a year disability payment from another department. He was then hired full-time as an officer for the Fullerton Police Department. So his annual take-home pay is $120,000 plus. Of course, he was suspended during this trial and then fired. After the public outcry. It was only after the public outcry that he was fired. But now that he's been acquitted, he's announced that he's seeking to get his job back. And of course, the Fullerton PD initially defended their officer's actions, and their training officer insisted that the attack on Thomas followed established procedures. Therefore, one can assume that Cincinnati has every reasonable expectation of being rehired. Thomas was tackled. He was hit with a baton multiple times. He was pinned to the ground. He was punched repeatedly, not just by two officers, but by a multitude of officers that descended like a horde of hyenas. He was punched repeatedly in the ribs, kneed in the head, tasered 4 times, and then struck in the face with the taser device 8 times. And Cincinnati, Officer Jay Cincinnati, of course, on the stand, conceded that he had beat Kelly multiple times in the face with the taser. Now, if you haven't, I ask that you go and view the footage. Yes, it's horrendous. It's absolutely heart-wrenching. You cannot help but be overwhelmed when you watch it. And I tell people, you should be overwhelmed, and you don't turn it off when you're overwhelmed. You have a moral, ethical, civil duty to watch this footage, because that could be you or one of your loved ones or your children on any given day of the week in any city across America. It seems as though we can't get hold of Robert, which is a pity, and so we're going to have to reschedule that. But something that I had spoken about and asked, I had urged people in my social network to reach out and contact the Fullerton people involved in this case, and I gave out their numbers. And I'm going to go and give out these numbers today because there is a push to have this case heard as on the federal level. And I had actually contacted Senator Feinstein's office and spoken to a couple of her aides because I called twice. Wasn't happy with the first time. The first aide that I spoke to, she was young and rather ignorant, as they tend to be. And so I called a second time and got an equally young and equally ignorant aide And that's something that really bothers me. I call the White House switchboard. I call our various representatives, not only for California, which is where I live, but I call representatives for other states on various issues. And so help me, you can never get a hold of any of these people. So I don't know who they talk to in their state, regular people. Do they talk to any regular people in their state? Because when you call, and I have this from multiple sources, I have a group of people that help me reach out and try to reach representatives from various states and from California. And we can never get a hold of the representatives. But anyway, I digress. I had called Senator Feinstein's office because I wanted to find out what the status was, whether indeed this was going to become a federal case, and I wanted to also push to make sure that these officers, even though they've been acquitted, can never work as police officers for the federal government again, because I think it's important that we keep these hooligans off the street. I hear a commercial break. We'll be right back.
Hugs and tears as two former police officers are found not guilty in the beating death of Kelly Thomas. Good afternoon. I'm Chuck Henry.
And I'm Colleen Williams. We were in the courtroom this afternoon as those not guilty verdicts came down just about 1 hour ago and only one full day into jury deliberations. An emotional end to a case we've been following now for more than 2 years. NBC4's Vicki Vargas live at the courthouse in Santa Ana. Vicki has been on this from the very, very beginning. Vicki.
You know, Colleen, it was interesting. It was tense. It was difficult for everyone involved in the courtroom. Before we went inside, Ron Thomas was the first to say he had a, quote, bad feeling about what here. His wife, former wife rather, was inside the courtroom next to him. She grabbed for a box of Kleenex. She then held hands with a representative from the district attorney's office as if they knew what was coming. And then there were many tears, a lot of emotion, as the clerk read the verdict and announced that they were not guilty on all 4 counts of the former officers.
Despite the fact that he's my son, I've never in my life seen something this bad happen to a human being. And then to have it happen by on-duty police scot-free. So what this means is all of us need to be very afraid now. It's carte blanche for police officers everywhere. Can beat us, kill us, whatever they want, because it has been proven right here today.
They'll get away with it.
They'll get away with it.
They got away with murdering my son. It's just not fair, so I guess it's legal to go out and kill now.
What the prosecution referred to as its best evidence, that video which showed this beating, did not convince the jury beyond a reasonable doubt that the officers had gone above and beyond their scope of duties. What became clear in the part of the defense was that this was, in their words, department policy, that it was to a T as far as what these officers had been trained to do, and that Kelly Thomas was a suspect, someone they were trying to detain, quote, not beat. Again, the officers initially, one of them pounding his hand on the defense table, relieved that he would now not be facing 4 years behind bars. That was Jay Cicinelli. The other former officer, Manuel Ramos, waited for the jury to leave. He then leaned over and hugged his defense attorney. Now, there was a lot of security in that courtroom, at least a dozen bailiffs. Everyone involved was then let out in back doors. We did hear, as you saw, from Kelly Thomas's parents. We also heard from the prosecution, and they made a very surprising announcement regarding the third officer whose trial is about to begin. We will tell you more about what this verdict has as far as an effect on that particular case and have more reaction coming up at 6 o'clock. Live in Santa Ana, I'm Vicki Vargas, NBC4 News.
This is a surveillance video. It was a violent beating that ended with a homeless man dead 5 days later. This is what it looked like in court today. 2 former Fullerton police officers acquitted on all charges in the death of Kelly Thomas. Now, we first brought you the verdict at 4 o'clock this afternoon when it was read in court. We're going to go back live to Vicki Vargas in Santa Ana. She has reaction from both sides in this very emotional case. Vicki.
And that it was, Colleen. There was a lot of tension in that courtroom leading up to the moment when the clerk finally read those verdicts. But the 2 words we heard from the officer's lawyer tonight, relieved and thankful. He is describing their reaction. These are officers who literally broke down as those verdicts were read. There was a loud bang on the defense table, which you might be able to hear on the video, just at the moment as Jay Cicinelli was acquitted of both involuntary manslaughter and use of excessive force. The jury delivered the same not guilty verdicts for Manuel Ramos, who was facing 15 years to life in prison. Instead, it appears the jury agreed with the defense that both officers were doing what they were trained to do. Lawyers telling us that there was no malice involved, that they were simply detaining a suspect. Now, prosecutors have said it was the officers' actions that led to Kelly Thomas's death, a homeless, mentally ill man accused of initially breaking into cars at the Fullerton Transportation Center. There was mail found in a backpack. Initially, they thought it had been stolen. They claimed Kelly Thomas tried to run away, and that at one point, he actually tried to take a taser gun.
These peace officers were doing their jobs. They were operating as they were trained, and they had no malice in their hearts. They were not out to get somebody that night. They were working.
Despite the fact that he's my son, I've never in my life seen something this bad happen to a human being. And then have it happen by on-duty police officers, and then they walk scot-free.
We had a fair trial. We gave the jury all of the evidence, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to me to try to do that again.
Tony Rakoc was referring to the case yet pending against Joe Wolf, the third officer. He will not be charged any further. That case is being dropped. That was the news, perhaps, of the day. And looking back, this is now the end of the case that began 2.5 years ago. The jury deliberating just about 8 hours over 2 days.
On January 14, 2014, former Fullerton Police Department officers Manuel Ramos and Jay Cicinelli were acquitted of charges in the July 2011 beating death of Kelly Thomas, a 37-year-old schizophrenic drifter. Although the not guilty verdict was a shock to supporters of the Thomas family, what may have stung even more was Cicinelli's statements to an Orange County newspaper, saying he would seek his job back with the Fullerton Police Department. "I was wrongfully terminated," said Cicinelli to the paper. "How do you argue with a jury of 12 who all agree on the same thing?" Residents and supporters showed up at Fullerton's City Council meeting January 21st to let the City Council members know how they felt about Cicinelli's rehiring.
If this guy gets rehired, it's not going to be good for the city at all.
Please do not hire those officers back.
Really, really urge the five of you to definitely not let Cicinelli back here. He's just not wanted here. His damage has been done.
Police Chief Dan Hughes was in charge of firing Cicinelli in July 2012, a year after Kelly Thomas's death.
I understand that one of the officers has alleged that I have wrongfully terminated him and that he wants his job back. I want this community to know that I am confident in the decision-making that I have made regarding these former officers, and I intend to vigorously defend my position and my decisions in each and every step of the employment grievance process that they have.
The tricky thing here is that although Hughes has stated multiple times that he will fight to keep Cicinelli from regaining employment with the department, Cicinelli may pursue a lawsuit to regain his job. But that only happens if an arbitration process falls apart. Cicinelli will have to make his case to an arbitrator who would make a recommendation to the city. City council members would then vote on whether to rehire him.
If you vote and put him back on the force, he will be out of a job. You absolutely know that.
Hughes says the Fullerton Police Department has made a lot of changes and is still changing thanks to recommendations from an independent review of department policies.
Any police officer who betrays the oath that they made to this department and betrays the oath that they make to this badge and what this badge represents, I will do everything in my lawful authority to ensure that they never have the privilege of wearing this badge again.
Reforms aside, the Kelly Thomas incident is a weight many residents in the city still carry.
You think of the very soul of this city being ripped apart by a police department. I think you will hear the screams of Kelly Thomas through these streets, especially in the downtown, forever. It will never go away.
For more news, visit youtube.com/pigmind5.
This is Ozzy Skateboard, and you're listening to UCUI.TV.
This is Diane Everett Snyder. We're unable to get a hold of Robert, so we're going to just continue. I'm going to continue talking about the Kelly Thomas case. I had mentioned before the break that I had called Senator Feinstein's office to find out what the status was on pursuing this as a federal case, and also to push for having these particular police officers involved with this incident never be rehired as police officers anywhere in the United States ever again. I think that aides in political offices are hired for their youth and their ignorance, because neither of the aides that I got a hold of admitted to knowing anything about the Kelly Thomas case, which I find hard to imagine. And the first one that I spoke to told me to write a letter to the senator, and I would be, and they would respond to me through the appropriate channels. I mean, you have to love it. Then I called the police department and the Fullerton Police Department, and tried to get a hold of the police chief, and was stalled. Couldn't get a hold of him. And my computer is down right now, which usually happens when I'm on the radio. So if I try and get out of this window to get the numbers, then I'm going to lose everything. So I was going to give out the numbers, but well, actually I have it written down somewhere else. Hold on a second. Okay, here you go. The Fullerton Police Department number is 714, that's the area code, 738-6800. And the police chief's name is Dan Hughes, and his direct line is 714-738-6825. Now, I urge everyone to be polite, but I urge people to call and let the police chief know that we don't want police officers who behave in this manner policing the streets of our country. Fullerton has been under attack by civil protesting, and actually made it illegal for protests for a while. I don't know if that order is still standing. The Fullerton City Mayor is Doug Chaffee, and you can reach him by going through this number, 714-738-6311, and that is the main office. So you can reach the city council members themselves, or you can go to their website and target them specifically. And I mean target in a nice way, not target them. Yikes. Let's see if there's any other numbers. Yeah, I should probably not give out Jason Sinelli's number. He's probably got enough troubles right now. I want to read part of a letter that I got, an email that I got from someone, and regarding the whole Kelly Thomas murder, which I spoke about last week, and this was one of the responses. I can't imagine the boy is calling for his father to come and help him. This is a basic instinct for a young man who wants his father to know how he's being mistreated, and then praying that he comes to help like he has perhaps so many times before. To me, this is unreconcilable, and these snakes need to be shot on sight. They are not men, not even a beast. For who would want to carry on beating and kicking a poor boy inside a man's body? This is incredibly demoralizing to watch. Not to mention our tax dollars are paying these fat pig salaries. They are reptile-brained morons, and they give these people a badge, a gun, and sticks and a taser. How do we continue as a nation when we give dumb shits like this authority to kill? I notice Obama didn't speak out either, because I guess the guy was the wrong shade. So much for compassion and any sense of fairness. Shows how monolithic and binary the leader of the free world really is. that's one of many emails that I got regarding this case. Someone else wrote, I can't believe that this man repeatedly screamed, "I'm sorry, help me, Dad," and then ultimately, "I can't breathe." And these officers continued beating on him like a pack of hyenas. Now, when you watch the video, you notice that the paramedics assisted a police officer with a sidewalk graze to his elbow before assisting Kelly. The police officers afterwards stood around and joked while Kelly lay inert, handcuffed, and according to the coroner's report, already brain dead from the beating that he had sustained. Some other things is that the officers were allowed to review footage of the incident before they wrote their report later that evening. The police chief then resigned as a result of this. And subsequently, we discovered during the trial that the police lied, the hospital lied, the coroner lied, and the jury followed the judges and the legal team instead of thinking independently for themselves, which is why it is so incredibly important that we talk about jury nullification. So in the absence of my guest, I will put up some links to some sites that discuss jury nullification, and I will also make sure that there are links in the YouTube video for you to follow and do some independent research into jury nullification and get talking about it, because it is an inherent right of the citizenry of this country to understand and exercise jury nullification. All right. Also, onto something else. Those of you that listen, that have been on the receiving end of Child Protective Services, guerrilla tactics, if you would like to have your story heard, I urge you to send me an email and perhaps some contact information so I can get in touch with you. Over the course of my shows for Wide Awake News, too many people have contacted me regarding the horrors that they have experienced at the hands of Child Protective Services. And so I think that this is something that we need to talk about in more depth. Recently, a Texas judge had ordered homeschool children removed from their Christian parents' home. It went through a lengthy trial. The couple were religious. They homeschooled. They had autistic children in the home that were not their biological children. And the children were taken away from them. And they were mandated to receive psychological evaluations and parenting classes and so on. And all of this came about because one of the children wandered off. The parents called the police to help them find the child. The child was found. CPS at the time said that there was no problem here. However, the caseworkers also remarked that nobody in their right mind would want to stay home all day with so many children, and ordered the woman to enroll in parenting classes and take a psychological examination. The hearing devolved into an absolute attack on their religious beliefs. The children were taken away. The couple appealed the decision, and the judge ruled that the state return the children. Based on the facts of the case, she also determined that the children were removed due to homeschooling, not removed due to abuse or neglect. And the judge that had made the original rulings and had the children removed for all the wrong reasons is a judge by the last name of Olvera. So I'm going to put this link up, but there's a petition to recall Associate Judge Graciela Olvera. And you can read more to do with this case at this petition site. And I think that it's time that we start removing these people that are not working in the interest of our children and not working in the interest of their office, but working against we the people of the United States of America. And that means that you have a civic duty to get involved. We've been apathetic for far too long. Unless something directly touches us, we feel that it's beyond our control. And what people need to understand is there's more than 300 million of us and just a small pool of them. And until you get involved, even if it's locally, get involved. Until you do that, these sorts of things are going to continue. And something else, we have more and more SWAT teams raiding sustainable communities. More and more we have SWAT teams raiding private homes that are growing food crops in their yards. We have SWAT teams descending on private homes to remove their chickens and their ducks. This is an absolute abomination. And anyone who would like to send me an email detailing their story about being under attack from their city council or their homeowners association regarding the growing of food or the owning of chickens or ducks for eggs, please send me an email and let me know. These are upcoming topics for my show, and the more details I have from people like you, the more balanced the show can be. And on the spirit of that, again, for the first time ever, I think I have enough time at the end of the show to give out my email information. That's Canary Chronicles at outlook.com, or you can reach me at Dinah Everett Snyder at hotmail.com. I want to thank everyone for tuning in, and I will see you guys next week. Thank you and goodbye.
Fatal shooting at a Florida movie theater. A retired cop now charged with second-degree murder after shooting a fellow moviegoer who was texting during the previews. ABC Steve Osunsami is on the scene just outside Tampa. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, George. This is a high-end theater with incredibly comfortable leather chairs and waiters and waitresses who bring food and drinks to your seat. So it was quite a shock when someone pulled out a gun. They were there to watch a war flick, the hit movie Lone Survivor.
A lot more than 10 guys. It's an army.
But long before the gunfire got started on the screen, it was happening for real during the previews. Police say it all started when retired Tampa Police Captain Curtis Reeves, seen here wearing a white jumpsuit, got fed up with the couple on their cell phone in front of him and his wife. They say that 43-year-old Chattels is seen in this news report from 2011. And his wife, Nicole, pictured on their Facebook pages, were reportedly talking loudly and texting away.
For more news, visit youtube.com/pigmind5.
This is Ozzy Skateboard, and you're listening to UCUI.tv.